Hi, in this version of AI in C#, I'm not going to show any code, but instead talk about some of the news that's out around semantic kernel. And if you haven't followed the news, one of the things that have been mentioned is that semantic kernel and a team called Autogen is doing a merger. That's been there for a while. But there is some news around them also changing their focus to actually a new kind of product. So let's go into what it's all about and my take on it so far. There's a lot of unknowns, so there will definitely be a follow-up video on this, but let's talk a little history before we can talk about the new thing. Because semantic kernel have been around since start of 2023, and of course is this enterprise-ready software, meaning that once we go version 1 and general available, it's all about not breaking stuff and such things. The other team who is part of this merger is Autogen. Autogen came from Microsoft Research and is not an enterprise-ready software. Some enterprises still use it, but Microsoft gives no guarantees similar to what they do on semantic kernel. And just to get the timeline of some Autogen, which I haven't really used too much out of the way, let's just mention that they have something called Autogen Studio, which is some drag and drop stuff in order to make agent workflows and such things. And back in January 2025, they did a full redesign of the tool, meaning, again, that is not something semantic kernel could, for example, do because they are, again, a GA product for enterprise, so we can't have them break stuff all the time. So that's the Autogen side. Semantic kernel went 1.0 in March of 2024, which is where they locked down no more breaking changes in the GA available packages. There's still some preview packages and so on where breaks happen, but else they are now the enterprise solution. But in 2024 was, or late 2024 was where we began to see some shakeups in all of this. AI became much more a thing in Microsoft and the world in general. And other teams, other than these two teams who were pioneers for Microsoft in the AI space around, or Gen AI at least, but slowly the rest of Microsoft came along, and something called Microsoft Extensions AI was introduced, and less known Microsoft Extensions Vector Data came along. And if you haven't seen my video on semantic kernel versus Microsoft Extensions AI, please go do that. I'm not going to go too much into details, other than this meant that the semantic kernel team would slowly begin to use Microsoft Extensions AI as their lower level part of the framework, and not breaking anything by adding new versions of way of doing things, but keeping the OS, which gave a bit of a mess. And up to now, they are in version 1.61 and just chugging along. Then in 2025, two major things happened. First was the Microsoft Build, which of course meant that all the new ideas for AI and stuff came along. And the major thing was the AI Foundry, which is an agent-based system, actually built in part by one of the main people from semantic kernel who have migrated to that. But also on a more sad note, the Microsoft layouts came along. There have been multiple steps in that during 2025, but the first one was a really organization shake-up, where some of the semantic kernel team departed. I don't know too much about the AutoGen team, but the main part of all this is that a merger was announced that these two teams should combine in order to do the future work of AI in the system, while Microsoft Extensions AI also understood. And quickly before the vector data, I didn't mention that too much, but it's actually because it's the semantic kernel who's behind it, and all the code is in the semantic kernel repo, but more about that later. But it's essentially getting rid of the RAG-based and vector store, so it's not in semantic kernel, but out in its own package, which has been from day one. But that package, the only one who is actually implementing connectors for it is semantic kernel for now. So now what? We are in July 2025 as of this recording, and before that we saw that semantic kernel was just chugging along, and when Microsoft Extension AI and vector data came along, two more branches part out with a more lower level AI part and a more lower level vector data part. So they needed to migrate a bit. AutoGen was not really affected by this, as far as I understand. But in July, they finally announced that what this merger was impacting the things, and that was that they announced that they are actually building a new framework. There's some rumors about it being called Microsoft Agent Framework or something like that. But as of this recording, it has not been announced yet exactly what it is. There's no official repo that are public yet, but that should come within some weeks or months, depending on how ready they are. They're saying weeks themselves, but let's see. But the major thing is that because of this new framework and a lot of the people from the semantic kernel team and AutoGen, which previously actually worked a lot together, it was very common that AutoGen made some far out there feature, and then semantic kernel made the enterprise ready version of that. So their agent framework in semantic kernel was inspired by AutoGen, for example. But the main thing is that they have announced that semantic kernel and AutoGen are now in maintenance mode. Maintenance mode for semantic kernel means that they will still keep it around because they are this enterprise ready stuff, but not build too many new features in it. They will bug fix and so on. AutoGen is more unknown since it's research. It will probably be around, but I honestly don't know exactly and what will happen to it. Of course, there's people using it, but Microsoft have no commitment to the enterprise that it will stick around. But it probably will, like all other NuGet packages like that. But the new framework, which we don't know too much about, is the future of semantic kernel as I see it, with Microsoft Extension Vector Data being the low-level part and Extension AI. So they are not affected by the new framework. The new framework will, of course, use these two as their lower-level parts, but what the framework will be for another video. But my take on all of this is that a good thing is it's the same team. It's the semantic kernel team together with AutoGen, which I don't know the people that much, but the semantic kernel team is a really good team, and it seems like it's not like any of them have gone away from the system. It's just that they are working new on this new framework instead of semantic kernel. It's also a good way of getting rid of the legacy features that semantic kernel have. They have their own connectors, which is not needed anymore because of Microsoft Extensions AI, and the same when they made this transition over, there's a bunch of things so you can do everything in two ways. So in that regard, it's actually a good thing that we get a brand new thing that only have one way built on top of Microsoft Extensions AI, so we can get our data. It also feels like the new framework is a kind of consolidation inside Microsoft. It sounds like it, at least, and I feel like it's a good thing. The rumor is that it's called Microsoft dot something. So my take on that is it will give more internal power inside Microsoft for this team, and more people will use it, just like Microsoft Extension AI got a lot of traction because it was the .NET team, while something just called semantic kernel that could it doesn't really emphasize that it's a Microsoft product, and the same with AutoGen. But getting a new framework, and especially if it's called Microsoft dot something, will give that feeling in my book. Negatives is, of course, we need to migrate. Semantic kernel is not the future anymore. We will, of course, need to see how different the new framework is. Is it exactly the same names? Is it called an chat completion agent, or is it just called an agent? How difficult will it be to migrate? It could be that it would just be a few namespaces. It could be more. Let's see. But I think it's still a good thing that I hope they're there enough to do a lot of breaking changes in quotation marks, but getting a good new foundation instead of trying to keep the migration part easy. Because moving to another system, yes, if you have built a lot, it will take some time, but it will be for the betterment in my book. One thing, personally, I don't really care too much, but semantic kernel have a JavaScript or a Java component, which is not really being talked about too much. Both AutoGen and semantic kernel had C# and Python, and it's been confirmed that the new framework will have those two as well. If Java will come along as well in the new framework is, to me, unknown right now. To me, it doesn't really matter, but for those who use Java, it might be a problem, of course. So I see this as a net positive for the development, but let's see in the coming weeks. And what to do right now if you are in a situation like me, you have used semantic kernel. Well, I would just keep using semantic kernel. I'm building new features and I'm using semantic kernel for that. I don't think it's good to go to Microsoft Extension AI at this point, just because semantic kernel is going away. I find Microsoft Extensions AI too simple and too much work to do some of the more advanced stuff like agents. So it's there in the background, but let's keep it in the background for others to build upon. What I do hold off right now is some adoption of the new things to me in semantic kernel. So, for example, the process framework in semantic kernel I hadn't used and tested, and my plan was actually to make some videos about it. But because of this announcement, I'm holding off a bit, seeing is it worth spending time on because of the new framework. Second, I would await announcement of the new framework. They are saying the announcement comes in a few weeks, and we will get access to the first bits. Let's see if that's correct or if it will take months. But normally, when they say something in their office hours and such things, uh, things actually keep the schedules they go with. So I trust the team that when they say it's within the coming weeks, it will actually be in the coming weeks. Probably awaiting end of summer or something like that. But let's see what the new framework is, and then slowly explore and migrate to that new framework. If it's dead easy to go to, if it's rock solid because the change is actually not too big, then uh, migrate quickly. But there's no rush away from semantic kernel. It will stay around for a very long time because Fortune 500 companies and so on have used it, and the guarantees from Microsoft is yes, this will stick around. Uh, the new framework will probably miss some of the more advanced features in the early days, preventing migrations, but only time will tell. So this is where we are now. A bit of an unknown situation, but not like a catastrophic or panic situation in any way. It's just, yeah, now we have had the pioneer years of AI, as I see it, and now we go into actually building something based on all the knowledge we have, and build the best of both worlds from semantic kernel and AutoGen and Microsoft Extensions AI. So I see the future as bright. Some of my older videos might not make too much sense. So once we have the new framework, I will probably redo a few of them in that framework, all depending on how it will be. Because the new framework will probably be mostly about agents and orchestration and collaboration. That is what the two teams were good at. In the early days, they were also good at just the simple stuff, but as Microsoft Extensions AI takes over that part, it will just be that it's bleeding through to the new framework that you can, of course, do a chat. You can, of course, do embedding, but that's secondary features. This framework will instead be uh, with all about agents, all about orchestration, all about planning and such things. And I'm looking forward to trying it. So with that, thank you for listening and see you in the